Some myths come from the past, some crawl back from the future. The first time the lake spoke, it used my mother's voice. I was 38, broke and half divorced and dumb enough to take a winter maintenance job 2 hours north of Thunder Bay. The pay was good and the posting said almost nothing. Remote research station. Seasonal access road, basic electrical and mechanical experience preferred. Isolation tolerance required. The last part should have been a warning. The station sat beside a lake called Morrow Lake, though none of the locals in the nearest town liked saying the name out loud. They'd just call it the water, or the place up north. One guy in a gas station told me if you hear somebody calling from the ice, don't answer. And then he smiled like it was a joke. It wasn't. The road in was one long white throat through spruce and rock. The snowbanks were even taller than the truck. No houses and no hydro poles. Just dead winter and the feeling that if the engine quit, the woods would eat the sound before anybody knew I was gone. The station looked wrong the second I saw it. Not spooky wrong. Not haunted house bullshit. Just wrong. Too much concrete for where it was. Too many antennas. Low buildings half sunk into the ground. A steel dock stretching onto a frozen lake no one would use till spring. Big floodlights aimed at the ice. Massive floodlights aimed at the ice. Not the shoreline at all. Like they expected something to come up and not walk in. There were only 3 other people there. Dr. Mara Vale, who ran the place. Thin gray hair tied back. Looked like she hadn't slept properly since the 90s. A grad student named Priya. Quiet and sharp-eyed, the kind of person who notices everything and tells you maybe 10% of it. And then the night tech. A thick-necked bastard named Danner, who smoked outside in -20 and had the face of a man already planning his exit. That was the whole crew. I asked what exactly they were researching. Mara said subglacial magnetic anomalies, which is the kind of answer people give when they don't want to answer. So I said, so weird shit under the lake? She looked at me for a second and said, basically. My job wasn't simple on paper. Keep the generators happy. Check the heaters. Clear snow from the sensor housings. Make sure the monitoring room didn't go dark. It was the kind of work I liked. Hands busy, and my brain quiet. For the first 2 days, it almost felt normal. Did I mention almost? The lake was frozen solid, flat and white under a lid of cloud. But at night, when the wind dropped, you could hear something under it. Now, not cracks. Not the usual groaning ice makes when it shifts. This was rhythmic. 3 knocks, a pause. 2 knocks, and then a long pause. And then again. Danner heard it too. I saw it in his face the first night we stood outside smoking, our breath blowing sideways in the dark. What is that? I asked. He didn't look at me. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Jesus Christ, you people are dramatic. He flicked ash into the snow. You won't think that in a week. The station had one room nobody liked staying in. Monitoring Room C, also known as Room Charlie. It faced the lake through a long reinforced window and held the audio gear, sonar feeds, magnetic readings, and half a dozen hard drives running day and night. That's where I heard my mother. I was in there alone around 1:30 in the morning, trying to figure out why one of the consoles kept dropping signal when the audio channel popped live by itself. Now, at first it was just static. Then this wet, low hiss. Then a woman's voice, close enough to feel like she was right behind me. Eli. That was my name. So I froze. And then it came again and clearer this time. Eli, don't go near the water. My mother used to say that when I was a kid, every summer at the cottage. Same tone, same irritation, same little edge of fear she tried to hide. And for a second, I honestly thought I was losing my mind. I spun around, but there was nobody there. The room was empty except for the machine and my own breathing, which had suddenly turned stupid and loud. The audio meter kept twitching, and then the voice said very softly, "It remembers you now." The line went dead. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat in the maintenance room till sunrise with a wrench in my hand. Like that would somehow help if reality came through the door. And at breakfast, Mara looked at me once and said, "You heard a familiar voice too, didn't you?" I said, "What the hell is this place?" She buttered toast like we were discussing weather. "Well, the lake appears to produce structured signal emissions. In some cases, they correspond with personal memory recognition." I stared at her. "You mean hallucinations?" "No," Priya said. "Hallucinations happen in the brain. These are recorded externally." She slid a tablet across the table. There was a waveform on the screen, time-stamped 1:34 a.m. My shift. "Play it," I said, and she did. My mother's voice came out of the speaker exactly as I had heard it. I felt all the blood leave my face. But how? Mara took a slow sip of coffee. "Well, that's the reason the station exists. That was when they finally gave me the real version. The lake had been throwing off magnetic disturbance for decades. No, nothing dramatic, just odd enough to get attention. And then 6 years earlier, a survey team dropped sonar and got returns from an impossible depth. The lake actually should have bottomed out around 200 feet, but it didn't. The signal kept going. 500, 700, and then 1,000. And then it stopped making sense entirely. And after that, people started hearing things. No, not random noise. Voices. Fragments of songs. Childhood memories. Arguments with dead spouses. Last phone calls. And lost names. The station got built quietly. Federal money and quiet contractors. Quiet reports. And the deeper they looked, the stranger it got. The magnetic pulses coming off the lake lined up with human memory states, certain sleep cycles and recognition patterns, even emotional recall. It wasn't just sound, it was targeting memory itself. "What's under it?" I asked. Mara looked past me, toward the window and the white flat skin of the lake. "We think the lake is sitting on a cavity." "A cave?" "No," Priya said, "something built." And that night they showed me the sonar. There were shapes under the ice, deep in the black. Angles that shouldn't exist in geology. Straight edges, repeating columns, wide terraces stepping down into the dark water. It looked like a city if a city had drowned before a history had kept sinking. And then the lights came on. At first I thought it was the monitor glitching. Small points moving below the shapes, drifting in groups, pale gold through the dark. They'd gather, scatter, vanish, and then bloom again somewhere else. Like traffic. Like something was still down there. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. Priya shook her head. "I wish." Danner refused to go on the dock after dark. I found out why 2 nights later. A sensor housing out near the ice bore had iced over. I bundled up and headed out with him just before midnight. The readings had started spiking again. The air was dead calm. No wind, no trees moving. Just that huge white silence you get in the north that feels less like peace and more like something holding its breath. Halfway to the bore site, I saw a light under the ice. No, not reflected light and not moonlight. There was no moon. This came from below. Soft gold at first and then brighter, moving in veins and lines, threading through the ice beneath our boots. Danner stopped dead. "Back up," he said. I laughed, but only because I was scared. "What is it?" He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Back up." Then I heard voices under the ice. No, not one voice. Hundreds of them. Men, women, and kids, speaking all at once in a low, tangled murmur. None of it clear and all of it familiar somehow. And beneath that, something even bigger. A tone. Deep and mechanical. Almost like a ship horn, except sadder. Except even sadder. Ancient even. Like metal trying to pray. The ice in front of us gave one long crack. A black line split the snow. Light poured up through it. And in that light I saw shapes moving far below us. Not swimmers, but people. No, that's not right. Memories of people. Figures walking streets under the water. Crowds climbing steps. Fires burning where no fire should burn. Towers with windows full of light. A whole place alive and gone at the same time. Then one of the figures looked up, straight at me. I felt pain hit behind my eyes so hard I dropped to one knee. And suddenly I wasn't on the ice anymore. I was somewhere hot. A stone city, black sky, red horizon. Bells were ringing. People running toward a wall of water taller than buildings. I knew the streets. I knew them like I'd grown up there. I knew where a woman in blue kept grain in clay jars. I knew which alley led to the river gate. I even knew the smell of the dust, and none of it was mine. And then my mother's voice cut through all of it. "Eli, run." Danner hauled me backward by the straps, and we stumbled toward the shore just as the crack spread behind us like a zipper opening. By morning, he was packing. "I'm done," he said, "and you should be too." He left before noon. The road was barely passable, and he didn't give a shit either. I really should have gone with him. Instead, I stayed. Because once something impossible gets its teeth into your head, common sense starts looking weak. Mara didn't even pretend anymore after that. She took us into the archive room and showed us the old files. Old sketches, old logs, handwritten notes from the first teams. One line underlined so hard it had torn the paper. "It's not showing us the past, it's showing us layers." Mara tapped the page. That's the part nobody wanted to publish. "What does it even mean?" She exhaled slowly. "We think the lake is a storage system. Not for data, for civilizations." I almost laughed. She didn't. "Every culture leaves records," she said. "Stone, bone, language, story. But this?" She looked back toward the lake. "This appears to preserve an experimental imprint. Memory at scale. Not individual memory, but a collective memory. Whole human layers." "Human?" Priya looked up from the file. "We're not sure all of them are human." That shut me right up. The next night, the readings were insane. Every monitor lit up. The audio channels were screaming. Magnetic graphs climbing off the screen. The lights under the lake moved faster than we'd ever seen. Whole bands of gold running through the black like arteries opening. Then the station lost power. Emergency red lights kicked on. Alarms started coughing through the corridors. Mara yelled for us to get to monitoring room C. We ran there in half-red dark, boots slamming concrete, and when we hit the window, we all stopped. The lake was awake. That's the only phrase I've got for it. The entire frozen surface glowed from below. Miles and miles of moving gold under white ice. Shapes rising. Shapes were rising, streets, walls, and even towers. Then older shapes below that, and older ones deeper still. They were stacked under each other like the world had been built and drowned and built and drowned all over and over again. Layer after layer. 1,000 dead ages under one sheet of winter. The audio system kicked on by itself. It wasn't static this time. It was a voice. Not my mother's, and not human. It came through every speaker in the station at once. Low and vast and cracked with age. Witness. That one word hit the room like pressure. Then the window began to frost from the inside. Letters formed on the ice. Not English. Not anything I knew. But I understood them anyway. Remember for us. Mara started crying. Silent tears. She was just standing there staring. Priya whispered, "It's dying." And that, more than anything else, scared the shit out of me. Not evil and not hungry. Not even trying to attack. But dying. Like some ancient buried intelligence. It had been down there under the world for longer than our species had language, storing every rise and collapse it could catch. And now, it was failing. The ice outside buckled. A dark gloom spread across the center of the lake. Water came up through the split, black as oil and streaming in the cold. And from that opening rose a sound I still hear some nights when the house goes quiet. Not a roar and not a scream, but a million remembered voices trying not to be erased. We got out before the eastern wall failed. Snowcat to the road, road to the highway. Mara never came back to research after that. Priya sent me one email 6 months later with no message, only an attachment, just a single image. It was the sonar scan from the last night. Not a city. Not exactly. More like a shape buried under city layers. Huge, curved, and organic, like the lake itself was sitting in the hollow of something alive. I never answered. That was 4 years ago now. The station's gone now. Officially decommissioned. Records were sealed and access completely restricted. Same old government routine. Cover it with paperwork and pray the world stays stupid. But here's the thing. Last week my daughter was drawing at the kitchen table while I made coffee. She's only 7. I looked down and saw she'd filled the whole paper with blue-black crayon, then gold lines underneath. Towers, steps, and people standing underwater. I asked her what it was. She shrugged and said, "This place is under the lake." So I asked her how she knew about that, and she said, like she was talking about the weather or something. It talks when you leave the sink running. So yeah, maybe myth is just memory with its bones showing. Maybe every civilization gets one chance to believe it's the first. And maybe, under enough water and enough time, the earth keeps a copy of all of us. No, not because it loves us, not because we actually matter. Just because remembering is what it does. And somewhere up north, under the ice, the lake is still trying to keep the dead from disappearing. So if you ever hear somebody calling from frozen water, do yourself a big favor. Don't answer. Unless you want to find out what was here before us. Or worse, what's still down there waiting to be remembered. Thanks for listening.